Hi, friends! Joseph here, and welcome to Home of Sound. We started Home of Sound in this podcast series with one main intention: to help artists, promoters, regular label owners, playlist curators, and others in the music industry share their messages and vision of the world. And as a byproduct, we hope that these chats will make you get to know our guests as people, and that some of you will also get inspired by their stories, experiences, and work. Without further ado, enjoy today's guest. Jason is a South African and American entrepreneur and music lover. He founded his own music blog Indie Shuffle and later Submit Hub, a platform connecting bloggers and playlist curators directly with artists and labels. His persistence led him to eventually be able to make his passion for music a full-time business, while providing value to the music and media community. After years of running a music blog and reviewing releases, events, concerts as a side hustle, while working a normal 9-to-5 job, Jason landed a big deal with a media company that helped him build a team of developers to scale the platform. Unfortunately, life went sideways when the big deal fell through and the media company went off business. Jason was left stranded in Europe with not much left beside debts to pay and his drive to create something meaningful. But his can-do attitude got him back on his feet and made things work out in the end. In this interview, we uncover Jason's path from being born in Cape Town to studying and working in the US, traveling in Europe, and building his own business. We talk about entrepreneurial challenges such as making things sustainable and hiring people, and furthermore, we extensively discuss the state of the media and music industry and the obstacle that artists are facing nowadays to break through. Last but not least, we uncover how to overcome difficulties and how persistence is key. And Jason comes up with an analogy that works really well. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall until at least one of them sticks. Enjoy. Thank you for making time, and it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Cool, pleasure to be here.
Amazing, yeah. And how are you? So you work from home, you have your own business, you have Indie Shuffle, you also founded Submit Hub. Like, what's your work schedule these days?
Difficult. I'll admit that not much time goes towards Indie Shuffle anymore. So I still we receive more than 100 submissions per day on Indie Shuffle through Submit Hub. And so that takes up some time. I probably listen to 30 or 40 submissions per day myself. And then we've got other people on the team who help out. But otherwise, like, I haven't coded anything for Indie Shuffle in a long time. And so, I mean, the Indie Shuffle you see today, including the iPhone and Android app, is like mostly stuff I coded. And it's been about a year since I've done anything there. So
yeah.
So most of my day now is dedicated towards Submit Hub, which has grown significantly with the pandemic. I mean people are stuck at home, and many musicians are having to think about how to transition their lives to a digital format, including their promotion and whatnot. So I mean, I think touring has gone out the window, and live concerts have gone out the window, and so a lot of musicians are stuck at home trying to figure things out. A ton more people are using Submit Hub, which means that my work day is just all day Submit Hub. Yeah. Well, I'm trying as much as I can to code. And we actually just had a new employee start at the beginning of May, which helped sort of free up some more time so that I can code. And no matter how much I code, I just can't get my list of to-dos to like come down. It just keeps getting bigger.
Yes, of course,
yeah. So I would say my day is pretty busy.
Yeah, and also, like, I think now we're gonna go into specifics of what Submit Hub does, so people in the audience will understand a bit more. But I think essentially, okay, let's start with that. So Submit Hub is kind of a marketplace where you are connecting bloggers, curators, people who have a playlist with people on the other side. So musicians, labels, people who do promotion for them, so that the musicians can send the music to the curators, playlist curators, or bloggers, and the bloggers spend some time to listen to them, and if they like it, they publish on their blog. Right, so in being a marketplace, I think specifically now there is a lot of musicians who have more music and have zero income, But on the other side, you also have bloggers who have more time, maybe less money because they have lost their jobs. So for them, it's also beneficial to work with Submit Up or like to get more submission, right? And have a very easy way to sort these things through. And yeah, I can imagine like you must have seen like a massive uptick in demand on both sides.
Since the end of March, yeah, we've seen 50% growth.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, in the number of curators too. So at the start of March, I think we had around 1,000 curators, and now we've got more than 1,300. So
wow. Yeah.
it took us, 4 years to get to 1,000, and in 2 months we've added another 300. So
yeah.
The growth has been pretty crazy there. The other thing I did was I gave everyone a 19% coupon on their credits, which actually ended up in people buying a lot more credits. And so there were a lot more submissions. There's just so many factors, I think, contributing into that growth. As you mentioned, a lot of the curators are stuck at home with nothing to do. Many of them had service industry jobs, just like musicians, and they're kind of out of work now. So I think it's an interesting time. They're not making a lot of money on Submit Hub. I think on the average curator is making about $150 a month, which used to be £75, but since Brexit, that's like £1,000. No, it's about £120 per month, I think.
Yeah.
So Adam, as an example, is probably earning about that much, and then he's probably going to turn around and reinvest that into his playlist. So which is good 100%. For the artists he shares.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Adam specifically, he doesn't he refunds the money if he doesn't take the music eventually. So which is another like added factor. So
he's probably earning way less than 150 a month then. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then just for people who never heard of Submit Up. So do you want to give us like your 30-second speech?
Sure. So I'm a music blogger. I have a blog called Indie Shuffle.
Yeah.
Blogs used to be really cool. They're still cool, but we used to be very influential in terms of what music would be discovered and what wasn't. And as a result, that meant that lots of people were contacting us. And it got to the point where I was getting more than 300 emails a day from prospective musicians, labels, etc., who wanted to have their music featured on Indie Shuffle. And that became quite overwhelming. So my solution was to build a simple submission platform where instead of emailing me, they could fill out this form and it would come through in a nice, consistent format for me to always just easily go through, right? So, the problem with emails is someone sends an Apple Music link. I don't have Apple Music. Another person attaches a 500 megabyte zip file. Like it's just all over the place. There's no consistency to it. So Submit Hub allowed me as a blogger to have a consistent way of listening to music and making a decision about whether I wanted to blog it or not. And that idea really caught on because it wasn't a problem that just Indie Shuffle was having. It was a problem that any curator was having at the time. So Submit Hub grew pretty quickly. Lots of curators signed up, and it became a very easy and transparent way for artists to get in touch with curators with the hope that they would get some promo for their music. And I guess the benefit for the artist. So one of the things that they might struggle with is that they have to pay. But on the plus side, there's a lot more transparency. You get responses from people, which is totally different to the way emails used to work. And it's actually way cheaper than hiring a publicist, which used to be the method you would have to use if you wanted to stand out. I mean, you would go hire a publicist after your 5,000 emails just failed. So 100%. Submit Hub solved the problem on both sides. Primarily, it solved it for the curators by streamlining the process and giving them incentive to actually listen to their songs. And for artists, it made it a lot easier and more transparent. But on the flip side, it is yet another service that is charging money for artists. And sometimes I'm very aware of the fact that if you're a musician in 2020, you're just shelling out cash left and right. You go distributor, okay, $10 a month per song. Submit Hub, great, I got to buy 100 credits. That's going to cost me $60. Okay, now I got to do this. Now I got to do that. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and there's very little return for a musician in 2020, except for maybe confirmation or affirmation or anyway, it's a weird landscape. That's my 2 minutes and 30-second pitch.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an amazing idea. It's an amazing platform what you created because, and I think I'm a musician myself. I run 2 record labels. I help other record labels with their promos sometimes, and I think it's an incredibly effective way to make it work. Because otherwise, I still think that is a very valuable service, and the value that you are investing by using Submit Hub is very little, like in terms of what you can get out of it, because you're saving a lot of time. What you were saying before is like, if you end up like spending 2 weeks sending out 500 emails and you get maybe 5 responses.
Yeah, and 5
You
of
know,
them want some money for their blog post as well.
That's true, exactly. So yeah, that is another tricky thing. Like I know that like in a way, like yeah, and there is more and more blogs, publications, or premiere channels who now are asking for donations or charging a little sum of money when they accept to publish your song. So there is another, like, if you want another step to go through.
There's actually a whole service called Muso Soup, which is based in London, I think. And their model is that you offer blogs money to write the blog post. So you say, here's £10. Will you write about my song? And you get to offer how much ever you want. And they frame it as a donation, but it's payola. It incentivizes, here's £10 if you write about it and nothing if you don't write about it. So which one are you going to choose? And I think that's moving into territory where it's wrong. It's no longer about actually liking the music and sharing it. And you might like the song, you might actually like it, but still you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're not doing it because you discovered the music and you're excited about it. You're doing it because they paid you.
So it's tricky because on the other side, like it's a balancing of interest, right? So you have someone who runs a blog. Let's say Adam has a full-time job. He does this thing, like, which is almost like another part-time job, if not full-time, the playlist that he does. And that's done for free. Like, nobody's paying him to do this thing. And it's doing an incredible service for people who want to discover music. It's doing an incredible service for people who end up in his playlist because they get discovered. And in a way, like, I would love him to start to be compensated so he can keep doing this thing. Like, I don't want Adam to one day drop the playlist that he does because he can't just do it because he just can't survive.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of like of finding a balance, I think, between the different parties. I think the ideal way would be that a song returns on an investment. So there is someone on the other side who is like buying on that, and then the money gets spread. Like, in a way, maybe the publicist or the blogger gets a percentage of that, something like that.
Well, I mean, I suppose ideally what you're hoping for is that when you get added to his playlists, it actually results in a return on investment through Spotify, as an example, right? So Adam adds your song, maybe his playlist gets at 50 listeners, but that actually triggers something in the algorithm that pushes it forward into a couple other playlists. And next thing you know, you're in a featured playlist. And so these small playlists can help kickstart that snowball effect. And then the ROI that you're looking for, the return, is that hopefully it's going to pick up a couple thousand plays. And so your initial investment of $1 to send to Adam actually pays you back $4 or $5 or $6. But it's still, I think for the vast majority of artists, it's going to be difficult to do that type of math. And you're going to get into a lot of trouble when you really try to tie it directly back to a playlist. So again, we're coming back to Adam, who's got some really high quality electronic playlists that he puts a lot of thought into. Some of them only have 20, 30, or 40 listeners, but those listeners are passionate about it. And so now if you're an artist and you trace it back to Adam's playlist and you go, okay, well, I only got 30 plays from that. That was useless. You're going to be in a bad spot and you're not going to think it was worthwhile. But I think what you will often see is that there's a spillover effect. So once Adam picked you up, then a couple other people did. Then you got added to playlists. Then you showed up in more, algorithmic stuff, etc. So I think people can lose track of that. The fact that you're trying to start a fire and your initial flame is tiny, but you're hoping that it catches alight and turns into a massive bonfire.
In a way, the spillover effect is similar to going, if you're an artist, like going and playing a gig in a let's say, a random bar when you're at the start of your career. Like, you go and play in a random bar with like 10 people. And then you can always think like, okay, it's not worth it. It's not worth my time for whatever reason. I think it should be worth more. But maybe you go there and you meet another person who's going to be your bandmate or your teammate or your agent, or you meet another promoter who will then book you for another.
Exactly.
It's the same thing about online. So someone puts you on a playlist, doesn't matter how big or small, you still will have potential exposure to someone who will like your music and will become someone who is in touch with you for life, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you never, I like to say, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. Most of it's not going to stick, but hopefully there's a noodle that stuck and you're like, all right, I got one.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So I think the comparison to a live show and playing for a small audience is actually a really good one. It's quite similar in a sense.
Yeah. And I think, I don't remember, I was reading about, maybe it was the Beatles, so like a huge band that used to do something like 1,000 shows per year in the same pub in the same way until someone discovered them. And in a way, like, I think we are drawn to think that when we see success of people, we are drawn to think that there must be something special about them, that the first time they actually did something, they blew up. And then we then compare it to us and we're like, oh, fuck, I didn't blow up. I didn't blow up yet. But probably takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of spaghetti, to use your anecdote. Yeah. Amazing, man. And so you're from Cape Town. You live now there. And it's interesting because I read a bit about your story online, and you, let's say, you went with your family to US when you were, I think, 7 years old or something like that.
12.
Okay.
1997. Yeah.
Wow. Yes. So you went there, you moved with your family to US, and then you ended up studying in US. And what brought you back to, you traveled also actually to Europe at some point, and then you went back to Cape Town. What was there something that drew you back to?
Yeah. Okay. So I quit Google in 2013 to take Indie Shuffle full time. That was kind of the peak of Indie Shuffle. Then I signed a really big ad deal that was supposed to pay out a lot of money. And I said, okay, well, screw it. I quit. I'm going to go move to Europe. It's summer. I'm going to go spend summer in Europe. So I went to Amsterdam for a month. Then I went to Barcelona for 2 months. I went to Stockholm, Paris, London, and I spent sort of longer periods of time in each city just so I could absorb it a little bit, right? And when things started to get cold, no one wants to be in Europe in winter. Well, I guess some people do, but I don't want to be in Europe in winter. So I thought, okay, well, this is great. What should I do now? I'm going to move down to South Africa and enjoy the summer there. And then when that summer's done, I'm going to move back up to Europe. And so I did that. I came down to South Africa. I ended up spending longer than I expected here. It was my first time living in South Africa as an adult since I had lived. So, I mean, I'd visited once or twice, but it was the first time living here, and I loved it. I joined a really cool co-working space and made some amazing friends. And then it started to get cold. So I went back up to Europe for summer. And that's when that big advertising deal that I thought I had actually ended up falling through. And I never got paid. And I was like, oh, shit. Okay. So my options now are, I got to get Indie Shuffle back on its feet, switch advertisers, and see if we can still get some money going. Or I can go back to the States and beg Google for my job back. And I didn't want to do that. So I thought, okay, let's get Indie Shuffle back on its feet, but I can't really do that from Amsterdam or Stockholm. It's too expensive. Let me go back down to South Africa. And so I came down here because it was way cheaper and I had no money. And that was kind of the thing that drew me back. And coincidentally, it was summer again, so it was pretty easy. Yeah. So getting Indie Shuffle, that sort of failure is what ended up bringing me back to South Africa, just because I felt much more comfortable with the cost of living here. I wasn't stretching myself as far. I could still go out for drinks at a bar because, buying a beer was $1. I buy a beer in San Francisco in 2014 and it was $6. Now it's like $15. So the price, the cost of living, I think, was a huge thing that drew me back here. And then it's a beautiful city. We got this massive mountain in the middle, and it's just usually good weather. It's very temperate climate. I met my wife. I got stuck.
Yeah. In a good way. I mean, like things happen for a reason, or at least it's good to think
I like
about
it
that.
here, but my parents are stuck in California, and so is my brother, and
Yeah.
they kind of wish I wasn't here. But the way I see it now, it doesn't matter, right? We're all stuck in our houses, so I may as well be in Antarctica. It wouldn't make a difference if I was across the street from them. I still wouldn't be able to see them. So
Yeah, indeed.
yeah.
With the difference that now you have maybe less pressure than being in US, because if you live in US and the price of rent, or London for instance, when the price of rent is super high, like you need to, the hustle becomes, or the pressure becomes much higher when you, let's say someone cut your stream of income, like you cannot go to work, your job like is off, or your industry is actually destroyed, ripped off by the crisis. Like that's much harder thing to sustain eventually.
Yeah.
So okay, so you went to US, and then I read somewhere in another interview you released that you straight out of uni you were applying to be a strategy consultant at some point, and you didn't manage to get through that, and you did a lot of applications, which is something that I think a lot of us go through. Like anyone who's been at uni, or anyone who has applied to jobs, like you send a lot of CVs, you expect an answer, you probably don't get any answer. And sometimes you do interviews, you get to stages, but then you get nothing.
Yep, definitely had that.
Yes, and then, so looking back at that now, I take you are satisfied with what you have in your life now. So thinking about what you were thinking back then, was there anything you would recommend to yourself back at that time when you got so many rejections that you were like, fuck, this is not gonna work?
I think that same strategy is actually what made Submit Hub successful in a way. So I wouldn't change what I did back then. Just so I sent out 100 applications to get a job as a strategy consultant because I wanted money, and that seemed like a high-paying job. I didn't get it. I got something similar, but it wasn't like a glamorous strategy consulting job at KPMG or PwC or whatever these big firms are. But the comparison I would draw to Submit Hub is that when I first launched the platform, I went and I tried to contact every single Hype Machine blog to see if they would come and try it out and join. And I think I sent out close to 1,000 emails, and I got about 50 responses. So I got a 5% response rate. And I think the lesson of the resume and the applications kind of taught me that you just have to keep going, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And I think, it's also a similar experience to what artists faced during the email era and what they still face today on Submit Hub, right? You send out 100 submissions and 10 of them say yes, but 90 of them say no. And
Totally.
you have to move past the 90 who say no and focus on the 10 and build that relationship there. So if Adam Heaton says he loves your song, awesome. You kind of got an in now, right? And you can send it to him again, send your next song, and he's going to pay attention to you. You probably have a chat conversation with him open on Submit Hub. You can be like, hey, Adam, just a heads up, I sent a new submission to you. So I think the parallels are there between the way that I applied for 100 different jobs and the way that I tried to contact 1,000 different curators, and the way that artists today similarly try to contact hundreds of curators to get their music covered. I think it's just that persistence. You have to go every day, just wake up and send it out. 10 emails, 20 emails, go. And that's actually, that's how we built Submit Hub as well. Myself and Dylan helped out a lot on this as well. One of the team members for Submit Hub, he spent days on days emailing Spotify curators, bloggers, YouTube channels, trying to get them to sign up to join Submit Hub. And that's how we grew from 2 blogs to 100 blogs to 500 blogs. And once we hit 500, we stopped reaching out, and the rest just happened organically because we actually have too many applications a day now, like 30 or 40 applications per day. So
from bloggers. Yeah.
Most of them are Spotify playlisters, and most of them are pretty sketchy. You'd be amazing how many new big Spotify playlists there are just out of nowhere.
Yeah. They might have both followers.
Yeah, you got 10,000 followers. How'd you do it? Well, you know what the answer is these days? Did you buy your followers? Yes. Really? Yeah, I did a whole bunch of Instagram ads to get my followers. And you go, oh, okay, show me your proof. And then they send all their proof. And you go, okay, well, I guess I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
So I think they've wised up. I think there are far fewer curators today who are using bots. I think many of them are aware, and they're pretty easy to spot as well. But I think a lot of curators today realize that I'm going on a tangent here, but they realize that bots are not a good move, and so they're actually investing a lot of money into Instagram ads. And we find that a good chunk of Submit Hub Spotify playlisters are taking the money that they earn from submissions and funneling it straight into ads so that they can grow their playlist and also keep the play count up.
Right. It's interesting because then I mean, like there's an argument for which if you acquire people who are really genuinely interested in what you're doing and you put the work behind that, you're just increasing your fan base. You're using Instagram marketing to go and fish for people who might be interested in your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they engage and they stay, you're providing value to them. So, I mean, it's totally fine. It makes sense. So it's kind of like they're building a business out of this kind of loop where they get more people to submit their music. They put the music out. They feed their followers with new content. They get more followers because they acquire them with marketing. And this thing is like it's a circle of like that grows.
Yeah.
And I think for me it makes sense. There are some, I don't know, I guess the downside of that is that sometimes they just buy followers who are not, or let's say they market to people, they attract people who are not really interested in what they do. And
I've seen a couple of playlists grow, 3,000-4,000 followers overnight. I have one case of a guy who grew his playlist from 100 followers to 4,000 followers in one day.
Wow.
We suspended his account because we have all sorts of code in place to try and flag things like that. We're monitoring their daily growth, and so suspended his account. Asked him for an explanation. He says ads. I was like, really? And he just gave us this huge dump. He spent 1,000 euros in one day to grow his playlist from 100 to 4,000. So he spent 25 cents per follower. Yeah, and that's difficult. It's like, what do you do? We let him back on because ultimately those aren't bots. But you bring up a good point. I mean, the quality of it, are those people going to stick around? Were they genuinely interested? How is his targeting? It's hard to say.
Very hard, yeah.
But why would they follow it if they didn't like it?
I don't know. It's strange because so especially if he's followers on Spotify playlists, like you sometimes, or I do that. Like when I use Spotify, I put follow and then I forget about the playlist. Like it doesn't make me an active user. So I might follow myself maybe 150 playlists just because once I found them, I like the music that they were playing on the playlist. I put follow so that I remember that I like that playlist and I can find it back when I want to. And then maybe I forget. Like I generally forget about that playlist for a year. That for me is the bit of the trouble, is that like you can acquire a lot of users if they are not really engaged with what you put out. And it's a tricky thing, right?
I'm with you. I would love to meet the people who are listening to these playlists, because myself so I guess I'm unique in a way, right? I'm so busy listening to new submissions to Indie Shuffle that I don't actually spend that much time going out and listening to playlists. But I think I've got one playlist on Spotify that's not mine that I listen to once a month. That's it. So when I see these playlists pulling in like 500 or 1,000 listeners per day, sometimes it leaves me scratching my head. And often the best explanation is that they show up really well for search. So if I go and I'm like, you know what I want to listen to right now? I want to listen to some minimal techno. So I search Spotify for minimal techno, and that's where I'm actually just going to do this right now. I'm curious who shows up. Okay, see, when I do minimal techno, Island Beats Records shows, Island Beats Music, which is one of our playlists. They show up at the top. So it actually makes sense that they have that many listeners, because people aren't searching for their playlist, and it's probably not even their followers who are coming back. It's probably just the people who are searching for minimal techno. So that's one of the things we look for quite closely with playlists, is to see where they show up in the app.
Yeah.
If I search for this playlist, where does it show up? If it's not on page 1, then they're going to have another explanation for how they have that many listeners. So Oh, it's tough, man. I wish Spotify would just tell us.
Yeah. Spotify, and also like Adam told me that the Spotify now has taken away the analytics for playlist curators, which I'm not sure it makes sense, but I think I know why. Like, and the reason is probably because they activated the marketing on Spotify. So now you can essentially do marketing on Spotify directly, where you are paying the platform to get more users that are similar to your following.
Okay.
Similar to the Instagram model, but on Spotify. So I guess they want to give the analytics only for people who are paying. So advertisers in a way.
But any artist can see those analytics by going into their
Yes.
Artist dashboard. So
the artists, yes, but then I guess the playlist curators, I don't know, or maybe it's to disincentivize playlist curator from
trying to inflate their numbers was one of my things. Sorry.
That could be the reason, right? Or to get money.
Yeah, it's people were using that to showcase their playlist and sort of demonstrate that it was big. We still have a way of getting that data, but that's my secret.
Yeah. There is also Chart Metrics. I don't know if you know them, but it's another platform.
Yeah, their numbers are out of date. So they were collecting. So some of their playlists, they show how many listeners they have. They were collecting that data from the Discovered On section. So now that all those numbers are gone, they don't have access to that data anymore.
Wow. Okay.
When the data disappeared, I reached out to them and I asked, hey, so where do you guys get yours? Because we were using that quite heavily as one of our ways of figuring out how many players a playlist gets. And their response was, oh shit, it's gone. Yeah, that's what we were doing too.
Ouch.
So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually just looking at Submit Hub's numbers. But I'm quite confident that they don't have an inside source or a way to get this, and we do.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ask the secret.
Well, there's some I've spoken about before. Is one thing we do is we ask artists to send us their insights. So once you've been shared by a playlist, let us know. We'll follow up a month later and say, hey, we noticed you got shared by these guys. Can you let us know how many plays you got?
Right.
So that's
one. So you get you get an average play, or you get an idea of a song plays in that playlist that gets X number of plays per month on average.
Yeah, and the numbers we try to show are reflective of the songs that get shared through Submit Hub. So more often than not, if you get approved and shared from Submit Hub, your song probably won't get put at position number 1. And it often leads to frustration for some playlisters because they'll go, hey, I know my playlist generates way more players. For example, the number 1 got this many. And you're like, well, is the number 1 an artist that you manage and represent? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, so this person you shared through Submit Hub, you put at number 72 in your playlist. It's like,
yeah.
So the numbers we share, the idea is to set expectations with submitters so that they know if I get shared by this playlist, I can anticipate roughly this much. And I'd rather the numbers exceed expectations rather than fall flat, because when they come under, if we say, hey, they'll get you about 500 plays and you end up getting 10, then you're going to complain to us.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's better to be conservative on these estimates, because in the end, it's an estimate. You don't know how it's going to be in reality.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So, okay, it's very interesting to speak about this, but the one thing that I was interested to ask you about is your path. So you started Indie Shuffle, that was back in 2009. 2009, yeah. So it was more than 10 years ago now. And I know that you were working full-time in parallel. So Indie Shuffle was kind of your way to, it was a passion, right? So you were doing that as a side hustle together with your job. How was your day settled back then? Like, how did you manage to do both things well?
So when I was in Washington, D.C., I was working at a consulting firm doing executive compensation. So I had to figure out how much to pay executives. And it was a very structured job. So it was from 9 to 5, 9 to 6. I forget the hours exactly, but they were very specific hours. And 2009, 2010, smartphones weren't really so popular. And there wasn't the expectation that you were always connected. And so when you left work, you were done with work. That was it. Which which in 2020 is increasingly hard to come by, especially if you work online. You're online all the time. And so in 2009, I would clock out at 6. I would go home, and then I would work on my hobby, which is what I think a lot of curators do. So I'd get home and I'd start working on the Indie Shuffle website. I'd try code some stuff. I'd find some new music. I'd blog about that. It was kind of easy, really, that balance between the two. And I think probably what started to happen is as Indie Shuffle grew in popularity, I don't remember specifically, but I'll be surprised if I didn't start to work on it a little bit while I was in the office. I don't remember. Sure. I actually don't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised if I started to do that, because it just it became such a big part of my life that it was hard to escape. But still, in 2009, when I started, the inbox, my email inbox, was still sacred. And I don't think people had realized yet that a strategy for promoting your music online is to collect 1,000 email addresses and just spam them all. That didn't really kick in until 2012, 2013. But up until, when I started, I'd get 1 or 2 emails a day. And those were cool. I was actually excited about it. I would open it, read it, and respond. But yeah, times were different back then.
Yeah, times are different, but also like when you have a very low volume, you can do that. Like it's a pleasure to actually sit down, listen, reply to the person personally. Once you get 300 per day, like it's practically impossible. Even if you spend 24 hours, like, it's impossible. Like you just can't have a team of people who just reply to emails.
Yeah, it's impossible, and it starts to get to your ego as well. And now you start to feel like you're a bit of a hotshot, and you're like, well, why should I give you the time of day? Everyone wants my time. What makes you so special? And so it can actually be a little bit. It can be bad. It's bad for your health in a way. Bad for your mental health. It starts to make you feel like you're a bigger deal than you probably are. And I have a feeling that definitely happened with me. You're getting all these emails. Everyone's demanding you. I would go out to bars, and people would approach me. It was getting to that point.
To pitch music, or it was
pitch music.
Wow.
To pitch music. So I'd go out with friends, and this was happening. It happened quite a lot in South Africa in 2013, 2014 when I first moved here. But I don't want to say I had like a celebrity status, but there was like a very small effect where I got in, and all the bands were suddenly talking about, did you know the founder of Indie Shuffle is here? And so I started to make friends with them, and I'm hanging out with them, and it's cool. And you'd be at a bar, and next thing you know, people would start approaching you and be like, hey, we haven't met, but I'm so-and-so. I've got a great band. Do you think you could check out my song? So it was awesome in the way it made you feel really cool, right? I mean, I felt awesome. People are approaching me. I'm like in a bar. People recognize me. Hey, this is rad. But it gives you a false sense of importance. And at the end of the day, I wasn't that important. And then it actually just starts to backfire, because you've got these people approaching you. They're trying to be nice. They want you to listen to their song, and then you're like, no, I don't like it. And now suddenly they hate you because you said you don't like their music, which is a totally subjective thing. But I mean, I've got I can think of an example of one guy. They sent me their music recently, and I just went through every song because I know them, and I gave them feedback on everyone, and none of it was positive. I tried to be positive, but like at the end of the day, it just wasn't my vibe. They hate me now. They won't talk to me. And it's like, well, fuck, dude. I didn't really want that to happen. Can't we just go out for a drink and not talk about me promoting your music? So So I guess that's sort of the downside. Is it can get to you. I have a feeling that's not so much the case in 2020 anymore. The sort of influence that one curator can wield is nothing like what it was in 2012, 2013. It's like getting a feature from Indie Shuffle or Ear Milk or Pigeons and Planes or any of these big blogs would, at the time, be a possible breakthrough. Today, unlikely, right? It's very unlikely. It's just a slow build, finding your niche. Okay, we picked up 10 fans here. Okay, we got 3 over there. Okay, we got 17 over here. And then after a couple of months, you can sit back and go, okay, we picked up 2,000 new listeners per month. And be like, that's great. But back in 2012, Like if you hit the top 10 of Hype Machine, you'd be cruising with like 300,000 listeners. Coachella would be phoning you. You'd have like UMG and Sony both fighting over who could sign you. It was crazy back then. And it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't.
It's very interesting because I think the reason, rationally thinking about it, the reason is that the market is even more saturated than 8 years ago. So the attention of spread across multiple platforms, multiple hubs where the multiple bloggers platform that are also publishing their music or promoting their music. So it's even harder for people to, like, the attention of people is not focused on one platform, on one blog. It's spread. So it's very hard. Even if you get articles on 2 or 3 of them, you're not going to get 1 million people. You're not going to hit the ears of 1 million people. I would be really interested at some point to run like a objective analysis to see all the artists that we can consider have broken through in any genre of music, and see, in a way, if we can reconduct that to like a specific article, a specific person, like being the tipping point of the or in their journey. I'm not even sure if that is a thing for more than 1% of the artists, like.
Oh, no. I mean, if you think about there's 50,000 songs a day uploaded to Spotify. 1% would be 500 songs. There are not 500 songs making it per day. It's like 0.00001. And many of those artists who are breaking out, well, some of them are familiar names from I mean, who's like The Weeknd is topping the charts right now, right? The Weeknd actually got most of his traction in the blogging days, 2010, 2011. He was doing covers of Michael Jackson and all this stuff, and the blogs were lapping it up. We loved it.
Yeah.
Today, I mean, like if Kanye West decides he's going to back you, that could do it, right? So that there are still ways to break up, but we're talking the 0.0000001%.
Exactly. But so if Kanye West backs you up, like, it's because he already has an audience built over the last 20 years. Like that's the thing. Like, I think maybe an example would be Billie Eilish, who has been apparently very successful by chance, because she uploaded something on SoundCloud and someone picked it up, and it was a song that she made with her brother. So like a very, very genuine song without expecting anything, and that blew up. But how many Billie Eilish there are in the world? Maybe one every 10 years or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Bieber was one, right?
Yeah, but Justin Bieber also, like, I think he built, I don't know much about it, but like he built his massive audience with YouTube. Like, he started doing a lot of YouTube videos. He kind of created his own audience, and then eventually when he started like publishing tracks out, he had like already like I think few 100,000 people that were listening to his stuff in a way. So he had built his massive audience that then he would feed into with music.
Honestly, I think it's next to impossible in 2020 for the average artist. I can think of one way that Spotify is to blame here. All the emphasis is placed on editorial playlists. If you can get into a good editorial playlist, you'll pick up 20, 30, 40,000 plays in a month. It's going to pay you $100, $200, $300, which is great. But the fact of the matter is, you're in this playlist with 40, 50 other artists. Most of their playlists have about 50 songs. You're in there with all these other artists. As soon as you get pulled, you lose all your listeners, because me as a listener, Spotify is encouraging me to listen to their Fresh Finds playlist, but there's no follow through to the actual artist. I just hit shuffle, put my phone away. And that age of discovery and engaging and actually looking at, learning about, and being part of the band's experience or the musician's experience or whatever, that's gone out the window. And blogs used to offer that. You would read a blog, there was a story, there were pictures, there's something you could associate with. But when I put on the Spotify playlist, plug it into my speakers and walk away, or I'm doing it while I'm driving, like I don't know who I'm listening to. I might recognize a song, but like I don't know what the artist looks like. Is it are there 4 people in the band, or is it just one person with a computer? Like what all of that's missing. And I think that makes it even harder as a musician today, because if you do get picked up by a huge Spotify editorial playlist, chances are it's going to be a temporary burst. You're going to get your plays and it's going to disappear, and that's the end of it. Like as soon as you're out of the playlist, your career is back to square one.
Yeah. Yes, and the other byproducts of that is that, first of all, like getting Spotify plays doesn't mean you're going to get gigs. Now, let's put aside coronavirus for a second. Let's put aside in normal day, like world times, when gigs are still happening, Like even if you have 100,000 plays on a track or on your music per month, like converting that into gigs, it's just on the game. Like you're missing a step. Like you might be able to convert that eventually, but it's not like a given. And then the payout on plays by itself is very little. We're talking about like 500 plays to get £1, then it's spread by the label to the distributor label, and then eventually the artist. So it's very little, like as an effect. Like, or let's say it's part of the equation, is never like the whole thing. It's not the game.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've realized by using Spotify extensively over the last year is also that it really depends on the genre. So if you are talking about hip hop or EDM or pop songs, those are the genres that are predominant in Spotify. Then you have probably like, let's say a tier 2, which is like the rock pop, all that kind of stuff, indie, electronic music, like let's say electronica, that kind of stuff. It's kind of a middle layer where you get to millions of plays, even like the top end of the market. And then you have the or let's say the niche genres like techno, for instance, or
metal,
which are almost left out a bit of, because probably the audience and the artists don't want to focus on Spotify because somehow they hate it. They have a very bad, they have a stigma against Spotify.
That's what Bandcamp does really well, actually. Yeah,
exactly. But then again, like Bandcamp, the issue with Bandcamp is that the discovery is like, it's non-existent. Like how do you discover someone on Bandcamp? It's almost impossible. The only way is that if you find someone who's bought that song, you click on that person, you can see their collection. But would you go and listen to, I don't know, would you go on someone's collection and just try to listen to the stuff until you find something you like? I mean, it's super hard.
I've never done it, but yeah,
exactly. It's hard. Yeah.
2020's it's never been easier to find listeners and never been harder to find listeners.
Keep them, or
keep them. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's never been easier to find listeners, but to actually get a meaningful amount and have that convert to something is increasingly difficult. And I don't think that Submit Hub is necessarily the magic key to it, because I mean you can just see the artists who hit the popular chart on Submit Hub, so the ones who are doing the best, they are probably just as likely to have the same problems we're talking about now, where they get this temporary bump. Sure, they picked up 50,000 plays that month, but once everything's out of the playlist, etc., it's gone. And actually, this is where I get back to blogs, because blogs are what you would call evergreen content. Like, it doesn't disappear. Once someone writes a blog post about you, it stays up for as long as that blog exists. And most blogs exist for a long time. I mean, Indie Shuffle's been here for 11 years. Very few blogs actually totally like shut down their hosting, remove their domain, and disappear from Google. In the end of the day, you get a blog post about you, you're going to show up in Google, and that actually gives you some. So now a promoter who's thinking about booking you goes to search for you on Google, and instead of just seeing, a SoundCloud link and a Spotify link, they actually see articles written by blogs about you with pictures and press stuff, and that creates the picture of you. So I think it's really important to not get lost in the metrics of plays. Look, I mean, we provide that on Submit Hub. There are plays and there is following, and you can get all of that stuff because, I mean, that's what people want. But if I was a promoter myself, I would probably be putting a lot more emphasis on blog posts, because that's the content you want. It gets you the SEO. You can also turn around and share that with your existing audience as sort of social verification. Like, hey, you're not a loser for listening to me. Lots of other people like to listen to me too. Here's an example. And people are like, oh, cool. I knew about these guys before this blog posted about it. And so it actually helps build that audience. And I think many modern artists lose that today. They're so focused on getting Spotify plays, and they don't realize that is ultimately an exercise in futility. You're not going to get your return on investment, and they're going to disappear eventually. And chances of you being that person who manages to pick up 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, it's very unlikely unless you've got a reason for the audience to get attached to the music. And that's we come back to blogs and live shows there, right? Yeah. It's that impulse, the connection. Something has to exist.
I think it's the connection. Like, also, like, like it's what investors in the tech world would call vanity metrics. That it can easily be, oh, I got I don't know 10,000 followers, great. I mean, is it like I don't know, like for sure in today's world is one of the metrics that people use to assess or benchmark people against each other, especially like public figures. However, does that help your goals? It depends, I guess. I mean, if your goal is playing gigs, maybe yes, because you can try to convert that, use that as a social currency to go to a promoter and say, hey, I got 10,000 followers. Maybe 1,000 of them can show up to the gig if I do a gig in London, maybe. Right. But then it's just part of the equation. Like it's not the whole thing. And I think I've come to realize that it's very personal down to the individual artist. Like there are people who really want to actually, I don't know, they don't care about gigs. They just care about people listening to their music, or they don't care even about people listening to the music. They just want someone they want a blog to write about why they wrote their music, and for them it's like super fulfilling. And then in that case, I think getting someone to write about you, even if it's a niche blog, it's perfect.
I think I mean, you can turn around and show it to your mom too. it's that it's someone actually wrote about my music. Look, it's not just me. I'm not crazy. People like it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important shift in mentality that many artists have to go through, is to realize that you're not going to be the next Avicii. You're not going to be the next Weeknd. You're not going to be the next Arctic Monkeys. You're just going to make music because you like making music. And occasionally it works for people, but it's not even 1%. It's not even 0.0000001%. So yeah, it's an important shift in mentality. And where does Submit Hub fit into it? I mean, in some senses there's a lot of things you can accomplish with Submit Hub. So there's the blogging side, which I love, but at the same time, we're sort of condoning this behavior and encouraging it and allowing people to pursue their vanity metrics. Here it is. Here's a bunch of playlisters. They'll get you your vanity metrics. There it is. Me as the founder, do I feel like those are really valuable?
That's at least.
And that all depends on you as an artist. What do you find valuable? Are vanity metrics important to you? Good, great. Is it important to you that those weren't just bought through a bunch of bots? Great, then use Submit Hub. You know, we try to make sure that they're not bought through bots. But
yeah,
shit, man, I don't know what is.
I don't think there's a solution. I think it's something that it's changing a lot. And one thing that one question that I had was, is there a niche of music for Submit Hub where you would like to get into more, that you think is not really present, not really active in your platform?
We are constantly trying to grow within the niches. I love it when I go to the Submit Hub popular chart and like the top track is a lo-fi house song. When you've got sounds like that rather than commercial pop dominating the charts, which happened for the first few years of Submit Hub's existence, it makes me feel a lot better. So niches we've tried to grow in, metal fans are really passionate about their music. I think we got 7 subgenres of metal, like thrash metal, doom metal, death metal. I originally had them all in one metal category, and Jesus, did they all complain. They'd be like, oh, I've got metal enabled, but people keep sending me doom metal, and I like thrash metal. I'd be like, well, they're both metal. Like, no, you don't get it. Okay, yeah, you're right. So, I mean, that's a niche we've tried to grow in. Things like classical and jazz are niches that are quite hard to grow in because there aren't that many curators there. It tends to be an older demographic of listeners, and that older demographic is not so into the idea of blogging or making playlists or that type of stuff. Maybe there are radio hosts out there. Certainly with jazz and classical, there's a lot of radio hosts, but those guys don't want to come on Submit Hub and listen to new music. In fact, most of those radio hosts, there's such an archive of jazz and classical that they could just go through that for their entire lives and never have to notice a new song, right? So I think niches like jazz and classical tend to struggle quite a bit. Jazz more than classical, actually. Classical's started to get a much more of a following. So we're growing in those niches, and then we're also trying to grow geographically. So Submit Hub has now been translated to 10 or 11 different languages, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. And you are, I'm going to guess, Spanish?
No, Italian.
Italian. Okay. Well, damn. Close.
Almost close.
So it's in Italian. It's translated to Italian. There's an Italian version of Submit Hub. There's a Spanish version.
Yeah.
And those niches are ones we're trying to grow in as well, because a lot of those countries bring their own flavor to music and style. Japanese. We actually just finished the Japanese translation of Submit Hub as well. So now it exists in Japanese, and it's great. Actually, I've noticed almost an overnight uptick in the number of artists from Japan, because they're landing on this website and they understand it now. They can read it, and that
Amazing.
And that makes a big difference, because they can navigate. They know what they're doing. They understand things. So the niches we're focusing on are not just genre related, but they're also geographic.
Yeah. Makes sense. Total sense. Yes. And one thing that I think, I wanted to ask you is about turning points in your life. So there was a funny story that I read in an interview where you say that you were in your first job. That was, I think it was before Google, and you were going back to the office or home from a meeting. You were with one of your coworkers or teammates, and you started talking about Submit Hub, or at that time, I think it was
Indie Shuffle. Yeah.
And then I think she or he said to you, "Oh, I think you're focusing too much on this random blog. Like, I think you should be focusing more on work."
Yeah, it was my boss. It was
Wow.
it was a performance review, and she said, "You should stop wasting all your time on this silly little website, and focus on your career instead, because that's what matters." And so, so I was on the chopping board. I was about to be fired, and I guess I was okay with that. I didn't enjoy the job. I wanted to do the music blog, but the music blog wasn't really earning anything at the time. It didn't seem like it was going to be something I could do full time, and I was in this limbo. And that's actually when Google reached out and they asked, "Hey, do you want to come do executive compensation at Google?" And that's when I was like, "Oh yeah, no, of course, I love executive compensation. Totally my dream. That's my passion." And it was actually funny. My boss ended up applying to join Google about 6 months later in an executive compensation position.
Wow.
And they came to me and they asked if we should interview her, and I said no.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I didn't like that job. So that was a turning point, I suppose.
So it was I guess it was a good reason for you to actually look elsewhere and focus perhaps more on your indie shuffle.
I think I was a bit too young to really be thinking about it. I was 24.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my first job, right? I'd been there for almost 2 years and it wasn't going that well. And Indie Shuffle was very new and I didn't really have a grasp of blogs or cloud before Spotify. So if I think back to it, I don't know if I even had a contingency plan. Like, I was going to get fired. Shit. I wasn't actually even looking for a job at the time. And then what happened was Google reached out. Oh, actually, now I remember. Google reached out, and when they did, then I went out and I started to apply for other jobs at the same time, because my logic was that Google might think I was more attractive as a candidate if I was having offers from other places too. And I actually remember, oh my God, this is taking me back. I did get a job somewhere else in LA, and they were going to pay me boatloads of money. I think So I think I was earning in DC, I was earning like $60,000 a year. And this new job that I was interviewing for at the same time as Google offered me 100.
Wow.
To move to LA. Yeah. So move back to California, be near my family, do this job. But I remember during the interview, I sat down with one of the bosses and he goes, we like you. We think you're going to be a good fit, but I just want to make something clear. We come to work to get a job done. We don't come to work to have fun. You do your job, you be professional, you go home, then you can be yourself. But when you're at work, it's about work and you need to do that. And I was like, boy, that sounds great. And I was like, please, Google, please say yes. Please say yes. I don't want to go work for these guys. I don't want to work for them. And it came so down to the wire. Google was taking so long to make their decision that I actually ended up saying yes to the LA company. Yeah. And then they're like, great, okay, cool. Well, here's all the forms to sign. And then a week later, I still hadn't signed the forms. And they're like, hey, what's going on? I was like, oh, just really busy. I'll sign them soon. And I'm just like, Google, where are you? Where are you? And God, it was the biggest relief to finally, when Google said, cool, we'd like to hire you.
Wow.
They were going to pay less than the LA firm, but it was a no-brainer. It's Google. So I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'll come. And I remember telling the LA firm that I had changed my mind. And they basically said, don't ever contact us again. Dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it worked out. I mean, and I think in a way, you could not have expected what would happen in your life. However, I think it went really well. Like, it's funny that when you look at things back.
Yeah, I think I'm in a fortunate position right now, at least, where if someone asks, would I have done anything differently, I would say no. So I count my blessings there. I don't think there are that many people who would say that, and for now, I'm lucky that I can. Hopefully, in 10 years, I will still be saying, but no, right? I mean, 10 is a long time, and so that was just one patch. We're kind of reflecting on a 10-year period now from 2009, 2010 until present, and that's gone well. But knock on wood, I've got like a bunch more 10-year periods ahead, and we'll see.
Yeah,
life's crazy.
Yeah. It is crazy. Life is crazy.
Yeah.
How it develops. Yeah. And so one thing that you said about Submit Up, so you started it as in a way kind of a follow up, a natural progression of the indie shuffle work.
Yeah.
To solve your own problem. One thing is, you started alone, or so Dylan was helping you? Dylan was
Dylan was interning for me on Indie Shuffle, and he moved away when I went overseas to Europe. He went to the States. He's also got American roots. So both Dylan and I have dual citizenship to South Africa and America. Wow. And he went away. I went away, came back. I said, hey, Dylan, check out this thing I made. And Dylan said, oh, cool. Well, I've started working a corporate job and I hate it. And I said, well, this one's getting kind of crazy. Are you sure you don't want to come and help me with this? So he joined, I think, 6 months into Submit Hub's existence. So up until the first 6 months, it was just me running it. So signing up, like doing the 1,000 emails to all the Hype Machine people, doing all the coding, that type of stuff. So Dylan joined in mid 2016, and then towards the end of 2016, I actually brought on Hinku, who's our head of finance. And I basically said to him, like, hey, can you just take over everything related to taxes and money, because I don't want to do that.
Makes sense.
So that was the team up until this month, and then we hired another person.
Wow. So it's 3 people running the show, essentially.
Yeah, well, now we've got 4, and we've got a 5th person helping out, sort of on a contract basis. She does about 2 hours a day. So yeah. It's me, Dylan, Hinku, Carrie, and Jamie. So 3 guys, 2 girls, and there's still so much work to do. There's still so much.
Yeah. You said something else, like in another interview, which is don't hire your friends. Like, how do you feel about that? And in a way, I'm really interested in understanding what are the drawbacks that you found in your path about working with friends, and on the other side, working alone. Like, because there's always, like, as a founder, like, you start a company because of something you feel you want to do in the world, right? But then the reality check is that you can't possibly do everything yourself. You would need to work with someone else. You probably need to hire your weaknesses, like your finance person. And the people that were closest to you who might be as crazy as you to accept to work long hours for no pay are your friends. So the reality is, like, you will turn to them first, and they will probably help you because they want to help you. They might believe in your vision. But then, like, how do you structure that? When is the point that you start thinking about, okay, I need to hire someone that I don't know at all?
I guess I was in a unique position because so Dylan, when he first started interning for Indie Shuffle, was not a friend. He'd actually brought me on for an interview on his radio show.
Wow, okay.
And during the interview, I was like, you're pretty cool. You're on top of your stuff. Do you want to come ride for Indie Shuffle? So that was how that connection started. But I mean, we all have friends. Hinku too. Hinku, we were friends, and then I brought him on as CFO. And I think in both situations, it was unique in that I could actually pay them. There was money coming in. Submit Hub has never been cash strapped, so we've always had enough money to pay for that type of stuff. So it was good in that sense. I think the main reason I bring up the don't hire your friends thing is often what will happen, or what I've seen happen running this business now, is that you'll encounter friends who are out of work, need stuff to do. They're looking for a job. They think what you do is cool. They approach you and they say, hey, can I help you out? And that's sort of the wrong reason to hire someone, because at the end of the day, it's not like what they really wanted to do. They didn't actually really want the job. You're just trying to help them out. They just need a little bit of extra cash. And we've probably tried that with about 3 people now, who are either my friends or Dylan's friends or Henku's friends. And every time it has crashed and burned, because there seems to be limited incentive for them to actually perform. It's like, we're friends, we're hanging out. Hey, oh yeah, what's going on? Whereas when you hire someone who is a stranger, and who's actually out there in the job market, applying for jobs, taking it seriously, dressing up for their interview, handing out resumes, they're genuinely looking for work, and they probably want to impress. So I think that's the difference. When you hire a friend, they're going to be far less likely to try and impress you. You've already got your relationship. They're gonna talk back. They're gonna, you're gonna have fun. Things are gonna be there. But there's not that boss employee dynamic. There's no performance reviews involved. There's none of that going on. There's no mystery behind it. And if I reflect back to sort of my days in corporate, having that structure of someone who's more senior to you, who just knows so much more, and that you're trying to impress, makes a huge difference. So that's, I think, why I say, if you're in a position to pay for someone, hiring a stranger is probably, obviously do your interviews and make sure they're a good fit, but it's so much better because there is no, let's put it differently. Ideally, they're going to try and impress you, right? They're treating it as a job. They're coming in here for a job to make money, perform well, and hopefully make more money, right? Mm-hmm. And with a friend, that dynamic just gets totally messed up. And then the worst thing that can happen is, right, that dynamic gets messed up. You get in a fight, and you're no longer friends. So it's difficult though, because as you point out, when you're first creating a company and you need help, if you're not making any money, you're going to go to your friends.
It's true, but I think it's a really good principle. Like, it's the rationale that might be the big differentiating factor. So you have a friend whose rationale is helping you or hanging out, and then you have a person whose rationale is actually building something. And I think the latter is a much better driver long term for the relationship, for the work relationship.
Yeah, I think it's important to start it as a work relationship and then develop a friendship, rather than a friendship trying to turn into a work relationship.
Makes all the sense.
It just puts a lot of pressure on the friendship, and then that work relationship doesn't exist. There is no structure behind it. So I got lucky with Dylan and Henku in a way, because they both are good friends, but also we've run this very efficiently. But with Carrie, we're really excited. I mean, she joined our team at the start of the month after going through an interview process. We got her through a hiring firm. So we actually did like a proper, they went out, scouted people, interviewed them first, then they came to us. And she's so far, it's only been a month. Has been a month. It's only been 3 weeks.
Wow.
But she's killing it. And so we're very excited about the difference that can make. And it's like night and day compared to the other friends who we were just trying to help out. Very different dynamic. So
yeah. Good luck, and welcome to her. Welcome to the team. And so you seem to be a person that in general has picked up a lot of skills that eventually informed or helped you in your next gig, in your next adventure, or let's say life experience. What is a skill that you've learned from the early Indie Shuffle days that you think you transferred to Submit Hub, and what is a skill that you learned in Submit Hub that you have now in your toolkit?
Coding, the biggest skill set you can have if you're trying to run an online business. Having connection is unstable. Hopefully this works, but having that ability to actually take your ideas and be the one to put them into practice makes a huge difference. So one thing I've done since the start of Submit Hub is I do a lot of the customer support, and I listen to people, and I'm constantly on Reddit, on Twitter, paying attention. Every time someone on Reddit posts about either a positive or negative experience on Submit Hub, I'm like right there trying to figure out how we can capitalize on that or make it better. So if it's positive experience, great. If it's negative, how do I make it better? And the ability to turn around and code that solution myself without having to sit down with a team, think about the architecture, and do that type of stuff is huge. So I mean, when I'm coding a project, I go, okay, cool, this is the end product I want, and then I start just building towards it. I don't actually sit down and plan it out. I never plan it out. I just do it in my head, like the logical next step. Oh, I do this, then this has to happen, then this has to happen, then this has to happen. And yeah, I never actually sit down in advance and think through that process. I just know what my end goal is, and I just start coding it. And I think that's a huge asset for the company because, well, for one, I mentioned at the start that we've never been cash strapped. I've always had money, and that's sort of an unfair statement because I didn't always have money. It was just there was no money and no expenses because the only expense was me.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like it's not like we always had money. We never had debt. How about that? I was never negative. And I think that is the biggest asset because developers are sort of the most expensive commodity you can have in a business for an online one. And to get your vision executed properly is hugely frustrating. I mean, I've worked with outsourcing stuff with Indie Shuffle. I used to outsource a lot of stuff before it's actually how I learned to code was by working with those outsourcing companies. So they'd code stuff, it would come back, I would review it and tweak it and make it look the way I wanted it to look. And that process was very frustrating because they never have the complete vision. They're just executing a task. They're not doing it. Like, they don't understand the full vision behind it when you're outsourced to someone. And even if you have a partnership, right, where one person is sort of the visionary and the product idea and the interface with the customers, and the other person is the coder and the technological person, I have seen in the past there's often a disconnect between the two, right? The coder is so stuck in the code and trying to do that they don't understand how the product works or how people are using the product, more importantly. And they get disconnected there. So for me, the biggest asset and the biggest skill I've developed here is to be able to code this. And when someone comes up with an idea or a suggestion for improvement, points out a bug, gets frustrated, gets angry, whatever, I can just quickly go and whip it up. I don't have to wait until we have a meeting the next day and then we go to the boardroom and we sketch it up and we do that. And then I wait a week for the developer to come back with their fixes. None of that happens with Submit Hub. I can just go straight away and be like, okay, cool, let me fix that. And 20 minutes later, it's done.
Which allows you to be less dependent from external circumstances or people.
Yeah. The question is how much longer I can do that.
That's a big question. It's like, I don't know how do you see yourself in the business, but eventually you need to find also ways to delegate. If you are operating a machine, it's going to be hard for you to actually, if you want to take Submit up to, I don't know, a 10 employees business or every music genre in the world.
I mean, the next big jump would have to be, so for now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to I'm trying to focus on the code and give as many responsibilities in the other realms as I can to other people. But I'm still there doing the customer support. Ultimately, I need to let go of all of that because if it comes to the point where someone knocks on the door, a major label says, "Hey, we want to buy Submit Hub," which has happened already, and we weren't ready yet. But let's say one day I do want to sell Submit Hub, and I'm ready to go. You know what? This has been a great ride, but 10 years of this was enough. I'm exhausted, right? Which I think is likely going to happen. I think there's only so long you can keep doing it, and eventually I'm going to want to say, it's time for the next phase of my life. I want to do this or that or something else. If I want to sell the company, I have to have developers. I have to have someone coding it, and I don't have that. So I don't know what the answer is there. That's going to be one of the hardest ones, is finding developers, and I'm definitely not ready for that.
I think that's I think it's something that I've seen in a lot of founders who are passionate about their business, and especially those who started the business and they've been there from day zero. What they figure out is that like it's almost like it's your baby. Like you struggle to think, oh fuck, I need to hire someone who's gonna do my job now, because you think they're never gonna do it as it should be, or you think like I like doing it, so it's very hard for you to actually like let it go. So
Yeah.
it's more like eventually like it's gonna get down to your idea. What is the priority? Is it like getting a
I'm
scalable?
stuck there right now. And it's not a problem. I don't have to change right now, but I'm very aware of the fact that uh, I can't just keep beating the coder on it forever. Or can I? Maybe I can. I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to last either.
Yeah.
I mean, like Hype Machine was the biggest thing in music for a few years. And where are they now? They're gone. But if you had told me, 6-7 years ago that Hype Machine would be irrelevant in 2020, I would have found that difficult to believe. And the reasons are very complicated for why it's irrelevant. I mean, there were a lot of different forces acting on it to sort of knock it out. I think one of the biggest things they did was to crack down on abuse. So there were a lot of people abusing the Hype Machine charts. They figured out how to get up there.
Right.
They were paying blogs. They were doing all this stuff, and Hype Machine cracked down on that heavily. And I have a feeling that that was one of the contributing factors that actually knocked down a lot of their influence. Because once that game was eliminated and publicists could no longer game it and A&R people from labels couldn't game it and all that, they didn't have a reason to talk about it anymore. But I mean, up until then, like if you were a junior person at UMG, your ticket to success would be to tell your boss that you got the artist up to like number 3 on the Hype Machine charts. And so it had a lot of relevance. And once they made it impossible to game, I think they just took a lot of the fun out of it and people stopped using it. So that was one reason. But my point is, I'm pretty cynical about it. I don't know if Submit Hub is going to be around in 5 years. I have no idea.
Yes, and it's interesting what you said before about like it's your decision. It's there's a guy called Derek Sievers. You know him? He's the guy who co-founded CD Baby, which is arguably the first.
I've heard about that, and he wrote a book too, didn't he?
Yeah, he wrote a bunch of books, and the one I was gonna suggest is Anything You Want, which you can read in 2 hours. I would definitely recommend. I think you will love it, and it's about him coding, starting to code while to build CD Baby, and eventually getting to a point where it's like he's still the main developer of the company. It's like he has like I think 100 people like working for him for CD Baby, and he's letting the company go wild, and everybody's freaking out because he's still like the bottleneck in a way, because he's still the main developer, the main coder, right?
Yeah.
And at some point it's like, yes, but I mean, I founded this company to make it my own utopia, where I want to code. I love it. I just want to make it happen. And it's kind of a split between, should I continue doing this because I love it, but that will block my company's growth, and he's blocking now my employees. It's very interesting because he gives a bit of he shows a bit of the fuck ups that come along the way. Very, very interesting book.
Okay, maybe it's time for me to read it. Because I don't want to be the bottleneck, but I mean, part of my philosophy has also been that a lot of the stuff that we deal with can be automated. So if you get the same question multiple times, make sure either that question is answered before it comes up, or you're automating it. And so I've always been quite against expanding the team. I've kind of hoped and wanted us to be able to keep it at 3 people. And actually the biggest thing for us now is the number of people applying as curators, 30 to 40 per day. That's become more than a full-time job. So that's why we had to hire. Like that was Dylan's job, and he was going nuts because he would spend 8 hours a day on that. And then what's that? That's 5 per hour. So about 10 minutes per application for 8 hours. He was going bonkers. And the thing with 30 to 40 a day, that's 30 to 40 new ones, but each of them have like ongoing, you ask them a question, they come back a day later. So he was waking up every morning to about 120 emails, and he was going to shoot himself in the head. And I don't blame him. And that part we can't automate. Like I can't just automatically let a curator on based on metrics. We need to actually review them and make sure they're there. And then the other thing now we're struggling with is once they're on the website, we need to make sure that they continue to behave well, because someone who gets on could decide a year later they're going to buy a bunch of bots. And And so we need to make sure we're on top of that. So these are the types of things where I am now coming to terms with the fact that probably can't code everything. A lot of it does require people. And so I anticipate that by the end of this year, we'll probably have another full-time employee. And
Which
a
is
lot of
probably
what's that?
probably a developer,
No,
like a software. No, okay.
no, I'm going to keep that for now. I enjoy that part a lot. And I would say at this point, we don't feel like I've got a really long to-do list that I need to get through, but I also don't feel like we're behind in a way. And so I'm going to stay on that. I'm just nervous to hand over my code base. That's a bridge I'll have to cross in a year or two.
Eventually, like, I don't know, if I ask you, what is your drive? Like, what is your vision? Like, if you just think about your objectives in doing some meetup, like, if this is, you do it because you love it, you don't want to sell a business for $1 million or $2 million or $20 million, like, do you really need to give it to someone else? Do you need to scale it? Not necessarily, right?
The scaling is happening organically. So I don't think we're actually trying to scale it. In a way, we're just trying to keep up. Yeah, I'd say that's how it is. So we're not out there in a way. Our conversation right now is marketing in a way, but I mean, like, we're not actively out there showing up at conventions or doing sponsorships or that type of stuff because the growth is just happening naturally. The more curated, it's the cycle that has been going on. So I think a lot of our work at this point is less about how do we scale. Oh man, now you got me thinking. It's less. We're not trying to actively make the business bigger. Let's put it that way. We're just trying to keep up with the business growth. I think that's the way I'd put it. And so I guess then that does mean we are trying to figure out how to scale, but we're not the ones causing this. Oh, fuck it. I don't know.
So it's almost like you are enabling your business, your vision is growing by itself. You are enabling that growth to happen. You're solving problems along the way.
Yeah, we're solving the problems as they come up. Problems related to the growth. I mean, problems like Spotify playlisters having random big bumps in their followers or super high engagement, and trying to figure out what's going on there. The other thing is now we're allowing Instagram influencers to sign up for submissions on SubmitHub, and we've signed up about 300 of them. And so we're learning a lot there in terms of what value they can offer to artists. So when it's valuable and when it isn't valuable, what signs to look for in terms of who's good to add to the platform and who isn't. It's kind of an exciting area to be growing in, because with blogs, I think there's a finite limit to how many blogs there are, but with Instagram, it's like hundreds of millions of. It's never ending. So we're learning.
And it's growing now. I mean, it's not going to be just Instagram. It's going to be TikTok or another platform. So social media, as we know them, might not, like, the companies that we know now might not exist in 5 years, but social media will probably forever exist.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long TikTok's going to keep going either.
It's
like a cool flare on my computer. The rise of TikTok reminds me a lot of the rise of Snapchat. Yeah. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way: I will be surprised if TikTok is still a hot topic in 5 years.
I'm more agnostic in that sense, because it could be not TikTok itself, but what is underlying TikTok is a new way of younger generation to communicate. I think that will stay. Like, that is the thing that we are uncovering with TikTok. It's almost like you are hanging out in the playground where all the kids are hanging out now, where us as young adults or people who are older than us are not supposed to hang out in a way, because that's kind of the playground. That's how they play with their own rules. And TikTok is a window on that. So you might take away the playground and build a building there, but they will find another park where they're going to hang out, right?
It's true, yeah.
For sure. And in knowing what are the rules of that, it's interesting to know that if you want to communicate something to their audience, which is going to be the new 20 years old, 30 years old in 10 years' time, it's interesting to understand how they communicate. And it's very, very, very different from the way we communicate on Facebook, for instance, or the average user communicates on Facebook. Much faster and much like, we think it's futile sometimes because it's about like quick things, stupid things, pranks, jokes, and that kind of stuff. But it's a way of, I think I started to appreciating that it's just another way of communicating. It's for different people. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we're going to have support for TikTok within a year, but right now, most of the distributors don't have their music on TikTok yet. And
Right.
so it seems kind of pointless. And the other thing holding me back there is that with Instagram, there's a lot of sort of payola culture, which is not looked upon kindly in the music industry, right? Payola is not cool. If you had to pay your way to success, then you just don't have real success. And if you're a curator and you're willing to accept money for placement, then you have no integrity. That's kind of the mindset there. But Instagram is a totally different playground, right? Where everything's about sponsored posts and, hey, you got to pay $500 or $1,000 to get on here. And I think TikTok is even more of that. And part of it is because a TikTok video requires a lot more investment with a song. You have to, I don't know, is it more than a blog post? Yeah, I would say it takes more time than a blog post, right? You have to set up a camera, do a dance, sync to it, come up with your choreography, whatever. And I'm actually really not sure if it can translate well for indie artists, because this TikTok is looked to and given as an example for songs that blow up, right? But at any given time, like we're saying there's 50,000 new songs a day on Spotify. How many of those songs are actually floating around TikTok and going viral? 2, 3, 10? And so I get way more marketing pitches and promos in my inbox these days from TikTok influencer companies who can help you blow up and do all this. And they give these examples of these acts that they help blow up. And it's like, yeah, we helped this major pop star get even more major. And at the end of the day, I am actually kind of skeptical about TikTok's ability to help indie artists,
right?
Which is 99.99999% of them. And I'm actually not sure if Submit Hub will ever
get into that.
Yeah, so I would say what's more likely is what we'll actually offer is more of a marketplace where you can do the payola, where you can actually approach a TikTok person and say, I've got a budget of $1,000. What can you give me? And I think that's going to be a way more likely play out of how it works. I don't think Submit Hub's model of, $1 for a submission and that's, you're getting paid for the consideration, not for the sharing. That doesn't work on TikTok because they're going to go, cool, $1 for consideration was cool, but if you actually want me to share it, that's a whole bunch more money. And so Submit Hub will very likely have a marketplace in the near future where you can go and pay a fixed fee for a service. And that service might be TikTok. It could also be an album review. So one thing we don't do right now is album reviews. We just have singles. And occasionally, not that often, but occasionally people say, hey, I would love an in-depth review of my album.
Right.
And there are some curators on Submit Hub who I think are capable of providing a really thoughtful and in-depth album review for $20 type of thing. Yeah. So I think I'll have a marketplace that sort of provides that type of service, provides TikTok performances, provides maybe even extra special Instagram stuff. But I have a feeling we're going to have a marketplace within the next year.
Yes, I mean, looking forward, and hopefully it's not gonna you're gonna have fun coding it. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
And going toward the wrap up. So one question is, how do you keep a balance between all that you do and your private life? Like, let's say not private life, so I think it's the wrong term, but like your work relationships.
Well,
let's go to relationships. Yeah, outside of work.
I think we're all struggling with that right now with these lockdown rules worldwide. So I mean, I'm lucky that I'm here with my family unit. I mean, I got my 2 kids, my wife, and that helps a lot. Like my heart goes out for anyone who's stuck at home alone. And within our age group of people in their 20s and 30s, there's quite a lot of people who are actually stuck in lockdown alone. And that's going to be terrible for your mental health. So how do I deal with it? I mean, like my days are pretty consistent routine wise. I mean, weekends I'm doing a better job of not working. I try not to work. But during the day, you know, we have the morning routine, we have lunchtime, we have dinner. So there's times where I sort of tap out. I look forward to the day when Submit Hub is not my job. I don't know. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? Because right now I think I'm spending 60 plus hours a week on it,
Right.
60, 70.
Yeah,
and I hate to say that, but that used to be the type of thing back in the consulting days that like a 22-year-old would boast about, oh, I'm working 70 hours a week, I'm working 80. And that was like a sign of it was a good thing somehow, when in reality it was terrible. And I loved that I could take Indie Shuffle full time and do the Submit Hub stuff. And it's no longer about, you know, working that long. And yet here I am doing 60 or 70 hours a week. Thank goodness it's stuff I want to do. But at the same time, I mean, you bring up work-life balance, and I mean, I can speak French and Spanish, or at least I used to be able to speak French and Spanish. But for the last 2 years, I haven't been practicing. So I want to start like getting my languages back. Otherwise, they're going to be rusty. I used to play a bunch of instruments. I haven't played instruments in a long time. I'd love to do that again. And so this has all just been chucked out of the window now because I've got this business that is just escalating really quickly. So I suppose to answer your question about work-life balance, it's not bad, but it could be so much better.
Yeah, totally, yes. And it's still good that you live with your family in a way. You carve out time for them and for relationships outside of work.
Sometimes you don't have a choice when you got a 2-year-old who's begging you to hang out. You just have to give up and just be like, all right, I'll write that email later. Let's go on this thing. So I've got that balance.
There is a guy called Dan Fleshman who happens to be also. I've been following him on Instagram for a few weeks now. He's a guy who happens to be the youngest CEO of a publicly traded company. So he became a CEO of a company that IPO'd when he was 23 years old, so very young.
Oh wow!
Yeah, crazy story. And he's an entrepreneur. Also, he's a social entrepreneur. Runs a charity that distributes backpacks to people who are homeless with just enough food and equipment and clothes for them to survive for 2 weeks. So, and he sends these backpacks to people who are like in trouble, so like in war zone or that kind of stuff. And he said, someone asked him the question like, okay, what is your life balance? How do you keep relationships alive with your wife and your close relationships? And it's like, okay, I know that if I'm having dinner with my wife, like I work very long hours, but I have dinner with my wife. And I know when she's saying something, even if it's like the most superficial thing, and then it's like she's talking about like walking out a dog, I pause everything that I'm doing, even if I'm in the middle of a campaign for a client, because I know that the client is there for, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. She's there for the rest of my life. So I need to put all my attention in her and give her my attention, and then I do my work. It sounds super hard to do, like when you get to the practicality, but I think as a principle, it's a good reminder of like, in the end, like your relationships are super important. Like if we displace them, you know, like it's much more important to have good relationships than have like a amazing deal with a client eventually in the big scheme.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Hopefully I need to get better at that. Like I'm not good at that.
I'm gonna go have lunch with my wife now. So
oh yeah, okay. So I'll let you go very, very quickly. If you have time for another 2 questions.
Hit me.
Super quick. So okay, this is a question that we ask to all the guests. What question would you like us to ask to our next guest? Can be anything, without knowing who they're gonna be.
Oh man, that's tough. I guess I'll just say what's coming into my head, but
go for it. Yeah.
It's what's one of the more embarrassing moments from your sort of teen years?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking I can think of mine. I can think of one. I've just got one popping into my head. I ran for middle school president when I was about 13, and I came second. And the girl who beat me was a girl I had a huge crush on. And I remember the day that they announced the results. For some reason, I was dressed in all black tracksuits. And I don't know why. I mean, because I think when you're 13, most 13-year-olds actually don't think about the way they're dressing.
Yeah.
Boys. The girls probably spend a lot of time on it. But I'm like, why was I wearing all black? And I remember her just being like, why are you wearing all black tracksuits? And when the girl you've got a crush on asks you this while you're getting beaten at the presidency run, it was pretty harsh. And then, oh man, I also remember that morning my mom gave me a little badge that says, "You're number one no matter what." Fuck, man, I still have that badge.
Wow. It was trying to help. I mean, like that's the thing, you know, like we need to give
Anyway, so that's sort of the line of question for your next guest.
Amazing. Okay. So, and the question from our previous guest for you is, what is your secret weapon as a person?
Oh, fuck.
Can be anything. Can be like a tool, like a way for you to convince people to do stuff, a way for you to make people forgive you.
Well, I'll just bring up the example because this is what I'm learning right now. With a 2-year-old, reverse psychology works really well. So if you want them to do something, don't ask them to do it. You have to try to figure out a way to make them want to do it. So in that context, one is eating her food. She sometimes doesn't want to finish her food. So the best secret weapon there is to start eating her food.
And so she wants it.
Oh God, I've never seen her eat her food quicker. As soon as you start to lean over and grab it.
No.
So I guess that's a little secret weapon. It's more innocent because it's just with 2-year-olds. But I'm learning a lot every day about how to engage with and interact with them. And the funniest thing is actually when I get super stoned, that's when I totally understand her. Everything does make sense. And it's the craziest things when I've been super stoned interacting with her. I can get her to do things.
Wow, yeah.
It's great. Like, going to the toilet. She's toilet training. I totally can convince her to do that. So there must just be something with the way I change my talking. Anyway.
It could be, interesting stuff. Yeah.
I have kids. They're pretty interesting. Definitely encourage it. But be ready to give up all your freedom.
Yeah.
Put up.
Yeah. I can only imagine. And the last question for you is, who would you like to say thanks to? Can be historical figure, person you really know in person.
Thanks to Dylan for trucking through 100 emails a day.
Yes.
yeah, it's been tough on him, and he's taken it like a champ. He's also had to couple that with the whole quarantine, which means that I mean, as I mentioned, for most of us, our balance of work and play is totally thrown off, and I think it's been difficult for him having so much work, and he likes to play soccer, but he can't play soccer right now, obviously. So there's none of that ability to let off steam and do something different. I think worldwide, we're all struggling with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Milan, in case you will be listening to this, thank you.
Yeah. Cool.
This has been amazing. And any links where you would like people to go and find you, connect with you?
No, I mean, anyone who wants to reach out, jason@submithub.com. If they made it this far in our interview and they mention it, then if they mention that they got to this point in the interview, I'll give them some free credits as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Watch. I'm going to have like 500 people email me.
Last thing you know, Dylan is going to have much more emails.
Oh, those emails will go to me. No, anyone's welcome to reach out at any point. Jason@submithub.com, or else on the Submit Hub chat rooms as well. I'm really active in there, and check in multiple times a day. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very good, man. Like it's been a pleasure to speak with you and to meet you.
Likewise. Cool. Enjoy your morning.
Likewise. Enjoy your rest of your day. And speak soon again, man.